What's up, ladies and gentlemen? It's Daniel here from the GeekSpeakNation channel, and we are here to talk about the Guilty Gear closed beta. So today, and hopefully at the day of recording this is the day it's going up, but the Guilty Gear closed beta is going to be starting in only a couple of days, Guilty Gear Strive specifically. And I am incredibly excited. I was able to get a few codes, not that I was trying to pimp the system out and use multiple emails or anything like that. That would be a gross misuse of the system. Regardless, I have access to the Guilty Gear Strive beta, and I am incredibly excited. This is a game I have been highly anticipating for a while now, especially since I went on this really big dive of playing ArcSys games, starting with Dragon Ball Fighters, and that kind of sparked this thing within me. I was like, ooh, I really want to try other fighting games by them. And so just building up in that hype and anticipation for this closed beta, I just wanted to kind of reflect on the things that have been discussed in the game previously, talking about where this current build of the game is going to be, and more so what can we expect out of this game in the future based off of what we might be getting in the beta itself. So going back and talking about my history with this franchise, like I said, it all starts back with me playing Dragon Ball Fighters as of, I can't believe we're going on 2 years now, 3 years now, around that range. It's been a while since this game's been out. And going back to the game's release, I really enjoyed the game for like the first 6 months, and then the mechanics in the game just became very frustrating for me, and the online just became a miserable experience for me to play. However, I found myself interested in some of their other properties, which led me to go ahead and end up playing BlazBlue. I think it was Central Friction, and then I also ended up playing Guilty Gear Xrd Revelator 2. Or is it Xrd Rev 2? Yeah, I think that's the one. But I ended up playing that game, I ended up buying it, and I had an absolute blast with it. Now, the only thing is, I couldn't find any rooms online to play people against, so it was mostly me playing with my friends and just playing offline and all that sort of stuff and getting used to the mechanics and understanding the game. But I really did enjoy those characters and those worlds. I just wish that the PS4 servers where I was actually able to find some people to play with, and most of the rooms that I did get into, the people were like, ooh, I'm not playing with you. You literally have 0 matches. Disgusting. Regardless, I ended up playing that game, absolutely adoring it. And I became incredibly excited because shortly after they ended up announcing Guilty Gear Strive, or at the time Guilty Gear 2020. Shouts out to Kai, Kisuke. Yes, I'm Team Kai all day. However, here we are now. It is, well on into the year, and Guilty Gear is still supposedly set to come out this year. And a lot of announcements and a lot of gameplay talk has been made about this game. The big thing about the Guilty Gear franchise is its complexity, especially when you make it up all the way up to fans of the Xrd series. People enjoy the depth that goes into that combat, into the Roman canceling system and all sorts of stuff. That depth and that complexity is what makes those games intriguing, makes them fun to watch, and it makes them hard to kind of pick up and play, but they make them very rewarding once you do. And that's always been the appeal of the Guilty Gear games, or at least from what I can tell as the newcomer, the outsider looking in. That's what I perceive to really going on right now. But with that being the case, what they've announced with Guilty Gear Strive is that they're taking a much different approach. What they want to do with this game is make it more appealing technically to people like me, who are more so the newcomers to the franchise, who've heard about it, played a little bit of Xrd but never really got too good at it possibly, or people who were too scared in general to play Guilty Gear because they heard it was an incredibly hard game. They want to get rid of that barrier of entry for players so newcomers can come into the game and enjoy the experience. The only problem with that is when you're trying to appeal too much to one part of your fan base, you end up ignoring the other half. which is your pro players, your casual players who are returning players, and that whole entire demographic of people who've previously played your games and love the way that they work and want more of that. But they are deliberately going out of their way and have said, and a lot of the developers said in commentary interviews, that they're willing to sacrifice losing out on the people or some of the people who've played their games for a very long time in order to bring in new life and bring in a new crowd. And as one of those people that they are actually technically targeting, I don't know how I feel about this. On the one hand, yes, there were plenty of characters in Xrd that I loved the look of and I really wanted to get to know and get to play, but they were way above my pay grade when it came to understanding how those game mechanics worked and how especially those characters work on a even some cases a basic level. So I was like, all right, this is a bit much for me, Chief. But that didn't take away from the fun of exploring what it was like being able to play other characters, whether I was playing Soul, whether I was playing Kai, whether I was playing Shin, or I was playing, oh god, what was her name? Delphine? Or something like that. Elfit. Regardless, whether or not I was playing those characters, I was still having fun with them and exploring them and understanding what those characters could do. And then I watched the Evo tournaments, and then I saw those high skilled players play the game, and then I learned new things from watching those players. I was like, oh my god, I didn't even know you could do that with that character. And so then I would go into, practice mode and try out that combo, and I'd be like, oh, that's pretty cool. I like that. So to me, as a new player, I like there being a somewhat barrier of entry, somewhat of the skill gap, because it gives me something to aspire to. Because I feel like when you get rid of that and you want there to be this, this clear line between mastery and not mastery, things get really blurry. And I think that's kind of how you end up getting in a situation like, almost like Mortal Kombat 11 in a sense. Like they wanted to dial back the combos, they wanted to dial back, a lot of the button inputs and notations and all that sort of stuff that made games like Injustice 2 or made games like MKX really, really fun, because they wanted a very low barrier of entry for newer players. And because of that, you sacrifice that gap between the pro player and the casual player and then the newbie. That gap gets really, really small. And when and I feel like when it's that small, it's even more frustrating. Like if I'm sitting here and I'm playing something like Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, I am not good at tag team based games like that. I am not. But I have a basic understanding of how those games work and how to play them, how the combo structures work, and can play those games fairly well going toe to toe against someone else. However, if I look at someone like Yipes or I look at someone like Chris G playing Ultimate Marvel 3, there is that like, oh god, I can't do that. But there's a funness to it. There's this excitement to it of seeing that level of like, oh god, I wish I could do that. That is awesome. But then you look at something like Mortal Kombat 11, and with their gap, it's more so about a technical of like, oh, he's really quick on that down one and going into grab or playing into the meta, and that's really the way to win, or more so the reads that go into it that aren't necessarily as compelling to watch. Overall, I feel like it's not as compelling to play and it's not as compelling to watch when you end up simplifying things. And I guess that's my number one worry with Guilty Gear Strive, is that we're gonna, by sacrificing some of that complexity, by sacrificing some of that, skill that it takes to play something like this, that you end up just making a game that's for nobody. That once you play it as like someone who's like me, a casual player or a newcomer, ends up playing the game and they end up getting somewhat adept at the mastery of the game. And then it feels like there's not much else to go besides like, oh, well, I guess I could play the game for 8 hours a day and try to go pro and learn all these matchups and all that sort of stuff, and you lose out on some of that engagement of just trying to improve and learn. I feel like that's going to be a strong thing to sacrifice that I'm not quite sure is worth it, as compared to making sure there is a bit of skill required to play these sorts of games. But with that being said, that's what the beta is for. It's for us to be able to test out the intricacies of how this game's going to work and how differently it is definitely going to play from Guilty Gear Xrd. but keeping an open mind for seeing how this gameplay is going to turn out. Because I mean, the game looks gorgeous and the combat looks super fun. I just hope it really is as fun as it looks, as it is to look at as it is to play. That's my number one hope coming out of this beta. My only reservation, or essentially another reservation I have about this beta that I am not too sure about the choice for, is that they made the big announcement that this is going to be the first Arc Sys game with Rollback Netcode, which is incredibly important. However, the beta is going to be working off of a delay-based netcode, which is no bueno. So it's a bit of a conflict, because I am excited to play these characters and test them out and see how they're going to end up working, but I am not a fan of the idea of having to play more Arc System Works rollback, more Arc System Works delayed based netcode. Like I tried playing Dragon Ball FighterZ not too long ago, and more I just kept getting infuriated, because it was, whether it was my inputs were missing, whether it was the always constantly having to change the timing of my combo structures, because it felt like every single second the ping was always shooting around the place and it was never what the frames were what they said they were. It just made for an incredibly frustrating experience, and made sure that I just never wanted to come back and touch that game ever again. So the connection is so important, and especially during the times that we live in now, with this national global crisis going on, rollback netcode is more important than ever, because more than ever right now, tournaments are being held online right now for fighting games. People are not able to go to their locals. People are connecting and communicating and learning new things and working in the shop and practicing in the online environment. So their online needs to be strong. And if Guilty Gear is able to land rollback netcode, that'd be incredible. That would be absolutely incredible, and it would reduce the amount of frustration that so many players go through trying to learn new games. Because it is so frustrating when you're okay with the concept, like, look, you gotta lose 100 times before you truly know what it's like to win on purpose that one time. Or like that you did everything right and everything was as calculated as possible, and you knew and understood the game because you'd lost so many times, you knew exactly what to do and made the right reads, the right calls, right? But it's so frustrating to do that and stay in that mindset of wanting to learn, even through loss, even through failure, when constantly you're questioning, okay, did I lose because of my lack of skill, my lack of understanding, my lack of matchup knowledge? Or did I lose because the game dropped frames and started eating my inputs and they just disappeared and then I got hit? It's an issue. It really is an issue, and it needs to be resolved. And if Arc Sys, a massive Japanese specifically game developing arm, ends up taking this to the forefront and pushing for rollback netcode and improving it and stunting on everybody else who is not using rollback netcode in Japan, this can be a very huge thing. Dragon Ball FighterZ 2 with rollback netcode, Grand Blue Fantasy, Grand Blue Fantasy? Is it Grand Fantasy Blue? I'm not too sure. I get so confused with the names for their games, I'm not gonna lie to you. But imagine all of those blue games across tag Battle Fantasy Blue. Imagine all those games together with rollback instead of delayed based netcode. That is absolutely fantastic. But overall, I am excited. I'm loving the character redesigns. I'm loving what I'm seeing of the gameplay, the visual style. A lot of people had issues with the menus and the UI. Personally, I didn't. I enjoyed it. I loved the look of it. That may have just been me. I personally didn't care too much for it, changing too much of it. I think it could have been definitely much more metal. Obviously, I think it could have had a little bit more edge to it. But besides that, I didn't have too much of an issue with the general concept. The only thing I had issues with, that there were certain things like your danger bar and meter and stuff like that were very obscure and very hard to see. I think those were a couple elements I wanted to see change. Like your general visual information, that needed that needed to be changed, because you need to be able to see that sort of stuff. But with that being said, overall, I am excited for Guilty Gear Strive. Everything is shaping up for this to be a really great game, and this is shaping up to be a really great beta. One thing that I love is that they're just giving us a whole entire day of offline play. A whole entire day where we can just shop, just go in the shop and just play against the CPU and get our stuff straight, and then the online opens up for all weekend. I am incredibly excited about that. I think it's going to be a good way to pace ourselves, get prepared for fighting other people online, figure out some combos, figure out what does and does not work. It's going to give a lot of content creators a lot of time to figure out and share what things have and have not changed, not only since Guilty Gear Rev 2 or since that time, but also since these other playable builds of the game, because people have said, yeah, the game is definitely changing from build to build, and certain things are being, you know, messed around with. But we're gonna see how it goes, and of course, on this channel, we are gonna be playing the new Guilty Gear Strive closed beta on the channel, I think starting, I think it's either Wednesday, it's Thursday is when the offline starts. And so yeah, I'll definitely be doing a live stream of that first, and just going over, trying to try out every single character, find out what does and does not work for me, what does and does not work for the game in general, and just giving my honest feedback and thoughts. And remember, if you guys do get into the closed beta, let me know how you end up feeling about it, and also make sure you take the survey that they give you and make sure you give that feedback for them, and make sure you're very honest and very brutal with your assessments, because that's how game developers get better. You put that pressure on them and you tell them exactly what the community needs, not more so of what it wants, but what it definitely needs, like Rollback Netcode, and then eventually changes really do happen, which is totally awesome. But with that being said, guys, I'm glad we were able to get hype for this new Guilty Gear game in general, and also the beta. And with that being said, guys, let me know what you think about this new Guilty Gear overall, the direction that it's taking. Did you get into the beta? Let me know in the comment sections down below. But with that being said, guys, thank you so much for watching. I'm Daniel, and don't forget to get geeky.